Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
I
you.
do through it. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Mark Coleman, and we have with us today Dr. Estelle Price, and she will be doing her session on traditional versus online pedagogy. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Price. Thank you for being with us both in the audience, and thank you especially, Dr. Price.
Good morning. I would just like to welcome those of you who have decided to attend this presentation. And also, if you're viewing this at a later date, I've truly been doing that. Yesterday, I was able to catch up on a lot of sessions. So I'm sure some of you will be viewing this on demand. Today, I would like to welcome you to traditional versus online pedagogy. And I would just like to share my profile with you. I'm a graduate of North Central University. I obtained my doctorate of education in educational technology with specialization in e-learning. I just also wanted to share some of the organizations that I am a member of, and I would really encourage those of you who have a passion for educational technology, such as I do. It is really beneficial for you to join some of these national organizations. Well, let's get started. I really wanted to start this session off with to let you know that this is not about remote teaching. And because of, I guess you could say, my philosophy pertaining to blended learning, hybrid learning, I really feel that this school year, due to the national pandemic, a lot of the terms were, to me, not applied appropriate. I really considered this as remote teaching, simply because if you take a look at the pictures, this instruction is taking place in real time. So although the students are at home, instruction is still being done in real time. So I refer to this more of remote teaching. But what I really wanted to prepare educators for is really providing instruction in the online environment for the K-12 learning community. The reason I did not refer to instruction this year as blended learning, due to the definition of blended learning, if you take a look at this definition, the students who were at home where learning was occurring, I think what teachers, maybe even the district, on the district level, they refer to this more blended learning, but it was really remote teaching, because with blended learning, those students who were at home, it was for when they returned back to the traditional classroom that learning would continue. So therefore, I consider this more of remote teaching and not blended learning. I'm sure we all have our different philosophies, but this is the philosophy that I am going to hold the district accountable for, because let's reflect back. Teachers who were in the brick and mortar, they were actually doing remote teaching, and this was not blended learning. I'm sure this is up for a great discussion, and I'm here for it. So if you want to comment on that, please use a social wall. Let's take a look at the first poll question. I really want you to think about this. Poll question 1. It says, have you participated in some form of online learning? I've given you several examples of what online learning looks like. So I would love for you to use the social wall to post if you have participated in some form of online learning. I would also say, as a learner, and maybe also as an instructor. So when you get time, please post that. The next poll question is that if you answered yes, were you prepared for instruction this school year? If you answered no, did the professional development prepare you for instruction this school year? I think these two poll questions can lead to a great discussion. And so I just really wanted to get your feedback in how you are viewing online learning. Well, let's take a look at traditional pedagogy. When we think about traditional pedagogy, it is face-to-face instruction. It takes place in a brick and mortar building. I've done some research, and if you take a look at this statement, it says that many of our traditional classroom teachers, that they were not equipped to teach online. Many teachers are not aware that there is a unique pedagogical skill required for teaching online. But it just seemed that due to the COVID, the pandemic, that the traditional classroom teacher was thrown into a situation where they had to teach online without having the background knowledge that there is a unique pedagogical skill for teaching online. John, please let me know if I have any questions or any comments that I need to address, and I can just stop with whatever I'm presenting at this time.
You do have a couple of comments that have come in. Several people have received online instruction in the past, but there is a couple of comments also that they were nowhere prepared, that no way prepared them to teach online. One person responded that they were constantly in crisis.
Oh my God. And and I worked at a K-5 elementary school, and I literally cringe. And I think it's because of my expertise that the teachers were in crisis. And I totally agree with that. But I was helpless. Teachers were helpless. It seemed as if it was not the time, sadly to say, that teachers could receive instruction or professional development pertaining to online pedagogy. They just had to go with what was given. And I applaud teachers, because during this school year, I wasn't as an instructor, I was working part-time. And so I was just going around assisting teachers who were just really in a state of crisis or just really needed help. And because of my area of expertise, I wanted to just say, there's a way to do this. But sadly, time did not allow for that. Let's continue on with the traditional pedagogy. Teachers, during the face-to-face instruction, traditionally, it's really difficult sometimes to get students to participate in discussions. You're waiting for students to raise their hands, or sometimes it's like pulling teeth, or you only have 45 minutes, so all students have to move at the same pace. Although we taught differentiation, but for 45 minutes, this is math, and this is what I have to do within these 45 minutes. So you're trying to move all of your students along the same pace. Teachers are using technology to meet the learning goals. And the great thing about the traditional classroom, I am physically able to see those students who need help. I can read their facial expressions, or I can see if they are not responding. So that is more of the traditional classroom. However, When we move to the online environment, pedagogy becomes totally different than the traditional classroom. Look at the responsibility that you have as a teacher. And I'm really focusing this more towards the K-12 learning environment. It is such a huge responsibility with the online learning pedagogy. If you look at this definition, I hope you agree with it, because it really depends upon you as the instructor. I like to say that you are literally the instructional designer. I think everybody this year should be able to put that on their resume, that they were an instructional designer, because of the whatever learning management system you were using, you were literally designing instruction without having the background of what it takes to become an instructional designer. This particular theoretical background theory that I want to focus this presentation on is the community of inquiry framework. I have, through my research, I have really gravitated toward this particular theory. This was created by a group of educators in Canada back in the late 90s. And when you get some time, I really would like for you to go ahead and do some background research on the community of inquiry. This is designed for the online environment. How are you present socially? In other words, how do you bring the human connection to the online learning environment? This is a responsibility as the instructor as well as the student. For your cognitive presence, this is geared more to the instructor. How do you make sure that your students are learning? How can you make sure that you have active learning going on? The last one is teacher presence. This is the responsibility of the teacher. How do you become present in the online environment? So we're going to focus on these three different presence that is part of the community of inquiry framework. I promise you, I am going to make sure that for each of these, that I give you some really good examples that you will be able to take back and use for the upcoming school year. And this is geared more for a blended learning environment. Hopefully we will not have to go back to, as I refer to as remote teaching. Well, let's look at teacher presence. And this was something that I was able to witness this school year. A lot of times teachers would say, okay, we're going to use this tool, or we're going to use, I need you to answer this question. Something very important that did not take place. As the teacher, it is your responsibility to provide some type of guidance for your learners. Online etiquette is a must. Students, especially in the elementary level, they really need for you to tell them what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. You must set the climate. You are the teacher. You are the one who's facilitating the learning. You're guiding your students. Students need boundaries, or else you will be taking time to say, no, that's inappropriate. So I feel that once you set and let your students know what the online etiquette is, then that will hopefully that the students will be able to abide by, and it will give you more of a leeway to guide your students. You won't be spending your time saying this is inappropriate or you can't do this. So it is very important that you set boundaries for your students. Another important thing for teacher presence. Because of the traditional classroom, you're able to immediately address your student needs. But in the online environment, you need to let your students know, this is when I will be able to return your email, or this is how we can resolve this issue. Your students need to know, when are you accessible, as well as the parents. The parents also need to know, when are you accessible? So it's very important that you provide some type of office hours for the parents, especially for the elementary students, as well as your secondary students. You must be able to personalize the learning experience. You should be able to differentiate different types of assignments on different levels that your students need. And that's the great thing with the learning management system. You're able to really personalize your student learning. Another way that the teacher can be present is choosing the appropriate materials and resources for the instruction. And here's a really big one that I believe in. You as the teacher should be participating in the learning activities. I'm going to give you some examples in the upcoming slides on how you as a teacher can participate in the learning activities. I know you're probably saying, when do I have time to do this? This will make a huge difference with your learners. Let's move on to social presence. For social presence, it is all about, how do we communicate? How do we build relationships? What is the learning environment? How do you build a community of learners? You can add a personal touch by creating a video to just let your students know who you are, what your character is about, especially for those students who are learning online. Another way to create social presence is use multimedia tools. Make sure it's not just all text. Add some video, add some audio. And another way to establish social presence is also, once again, create virtual hours for your learners. And as I said, for the elementary students, especially for the parents. Timely response. How quickly can you respond to those needs or to the lesson or when you're participating? It's other than just email. I'm not just talking about email timely responses. I'm talking within the learning management system. How quickly can you respond? Let's look at the last presence, cognitive presence. This is where everything is based on motivation. How do students reflect on their learning? As the teacher, what type of assessments are you using? Formative. What is it, real time? Is it peer collaboration? What are your summative assessments? What do they look like? You are responsible for going over and developing your learning objectives. More importantly, you're scaffolding their learning. At this time, I just really want you to jot down on the social wall, what type of assessment tools did you use this school year? I would really be interested in knowing, what did you use for formative assessment? What did you use for your summative assessment? John, if you get a chance, if some of the attendees are jotting those in, could you please share them out?
Certainly.
Just let me know if I need to continue.
They haven't come in yet. I will keep notes of what's coming in though. So when
Okay,
in a few minutes, I can let you know.
all right. I actually saw a lot of teachers using Nearpod for formative assessments. Kahoot is a big one. For summative assessments, especially in the secondary, on the secondary level, teachers were using like Google Sites for students to build their portfolios. We're going to continue on. There are 4 online activities that I'm going to go into more detail. Web conference, discussion board, polling, and instructional video. I'm going to be providing some tips that I feel could really assist you with the upcoming school year in being more successful. So the first online tool that I'm going to discuss is web conference. I know many of you use Zoom, you use Microsoft Teams, and let's go over some things. It is very important, especially at the start of the school year, that you provide a welcome message for your students. These are just some tips. When you're in the web conference, it's really great for you to address your learner by name, or it depends upon if you have a class of 30 or more. I'm not saying each individual student, but when you're in the web conference, always make sure you address your learner by name. Even within the welcome message, you can just say, welcome to class 304. I'm so glad to have you with me this school year. You just want to create maybe like a video of a welcome message. Or if you don't have time to do a video, it's always great to use the whiteboard in the web conference where you can just simply display the welcome message. So as students are entering that online conference, they're able to see the welcome message. So believe it or not, that really does let the students know that you are there. So this is more of a teacher presence, more of a social presence. And so also, I think it's a great idea if you create a template, that would be something that you can just use over and over. Here's another tip, online etiquette. I actually created rules and guidelines. I also made sure that students in the beginning, I created like a Google form to make sure that students acknowledge that they had read the rules, they had read the guidelines, and I was able to get their consent. Also, with your school district, they have a code of conduct, and you should hold your students accountable by using the student code of conduct.
Dr. Price,
yes.
we had someone comment that they could barely get their students to engage, that they would log on, leave the room during conferencing and things to that effect. As a response to a few minutes ago.
Did this person, attendee, did you provide them with the rubric? When I was using the online conference, I graded my students I gave them points. One, when they entered the room, I gave them points when they collaborated, or I actually used a rubric. So if they did not follow the rubric that I had provided, then I feel as if it is that individual choice because what grade are you going to get? I really believe that, especially with secondary, that you should give them some type of participation points for attending, for participating, keeping the camera on. I know that sounds, really trivial, but this was our students were not prepared as well as the teachers. So if you have these rules and guidelines in place, hopefully that will address some of the issues of students leaving. Now, you do understand that there are some things that are out of our control. I've had students during this time where it was the parent would say, I need to make a run to Walmart. That's out of our control. There's nothing we can do about that. So there are some things, what can we control? And like I say, don't worry about what you cannot control. And I feel that this year, participation grades and some of those other things were pretty lenient this year. Hopefully, I've given you some tips with using a rubric or some type of participation grade to keep your students engaged. I'm open for a discussion. Something else that we did not get a chance to do this school year, next year, I'm really trying to prepare you for the next school year that's coming up. With whatever web tool you're using, whatever conference tool you're using, provide some type of tutorial, especially for your elementary students. You might want to do a screencast to show them the environment of whatever tool they're using, highlighting this is, you click on this is for your audio, you click on this is for your camera. So this will give your students time to know or how to use the different tools so that when instruction began, you're not spending all of your time trying to tell students, look over here, go up here, or look to the right, but that you have provided maybe like a screencast, or you sent an attachment. Something else that you should really consider is that as the admin, there are certain tools for elementary students I would disable, or you have the right to enable certain tools. Use those admin rights. If you use your admin rights, that could really cut down of a lot of distraction that takes place on a web conference. I've done a lot of research on this, and the reason I'm laughing is because my heart just went out to teachers this year. And I just felt so helpless because it just wasn't time permitted for teachers to receive the proper instruction for online. Research has shown that even within a web conference, when you, especially with elementary students, you need to, from every 3 to 5 minutes, do something to engage your students. You might need to use the poll. You might need to use the chat feature. Because of their attention span, you literally need to stop every 3 to 5 minutes and provide some type of engagement for your learners. John, can you tell me how I'm doing on time?
We are at about the halfway point, and on the social wall, we saw that as we progressed, one of our participants did do some of the recommendations, but by then the frustration had already set in.
I'm sorry. This, even for your breakout session, because many teachers use this feature within the web conference. For the upcoming school year, if you know you're going to be conducting web conferences, you need to create roles and responsibilities for your students when they're in the breakout session. Once again, I'm going to go back to the online etiquette part. What are they allowed to do in the breakout session? Are they on topic? You as the teacher or as the instructor, you can go into each of those breakout sessions and monitor what your students are doing. Provide a rubric for them. Let them know what is required. What is the evidence that they completed what was assigned to them? If it was to meet as a group and work on a project, give me a screenshot so I can see what was done. So these are just some little tips that I think could really help you for the upcoming school year if you're continuing on with web conferencing. When time permits, if you can list one tip not mentioned pertaining to web conference, this is how we build our community of learners. Because like I said, I know the attendees, they're going to go back, they're going to watch this. And so I would love for this discussion to continue. And so if you have any tips that you would like to provide for the web conference, please use the social wall. Let's look at another online tool that was used this year, our discussion board. A lot took place on this discussion board. Now, remember, in the beginning, I talked about there's a difference between remote teaching and blended learning. So because instruction was taking place real time, I'm focusing more on the blended part, not remote teaching. I know here in the state of Florida, many school districts have made the decision that those students who want to continue learning at home must enroll in a virtual school. So therefore, that gives the teachers here more of an opportunity to really do blended learning with instruction taking place in the traditional classroom and learning continuing online. So this session is really designed for this purpose. So for a discussion board, with the asynchronous learning, we know that this instruction takes place 24/7. Students will be able to access your discussion board any time of the day, any time of the night. Once again, I know it seems like I keep repeating this, but this will help you if you create a rubric for your discussion board. The type of rubric that I created for elementary students, it was simple. It was your post must contain 25 to 30 words. You must reply to 2 posts. Also, I'd added that you can, the post can only be academic related. I know you probably say, why are you saying academic related? Because students that young, they have the tendency to just add, what's the word I want to say? To get off topic. So therefore, I provided a rubric for my students to make sure that every time we used the discussion board, they knew their post was 20 to 30 words. They knew they had to reply to at least 2 students. And also they knew that I, as the teacher, would also be on that discussion board. Maybe not at the same time, not synchronously, But I would go in if I saw that a student only had maybe one response, I would go and reply to that student. And that way, when students see that, oh, Dr. Price answered that post, then that tends to make your students want to also go ahead and support that particular learner. Excuse me. Let me get a sip of water. Sorry about that. But this is how you establish teacher presence, by participating in the discussion along with your students. And this will be the result. As you move to your fourth and up to the secondary level, require that they have some type of citation, whether it's a web link, whether it's a picture, a meme, or just a little reflection. But hold your intermediate grades to your secondary students. Make sure that they have some type of citation to support their discussion. Polling. This is another feature that you can use. It is really designed for you to gather some data. This is real time. It's anonymity. Students have the liberty to post without being identified. Or you as the instructor, it will let you know, especially if you're doing using polling for formative assessment. What is it that my students know? What is it that my students lack? So that will help you as the teacher to address those concerns and to address those problem areas. So using polling, it can be more than just for voting. It can be used for formative assessments. This is another tool that teachers have been using. Either you're going to use a video from YouTube, but research says, this is what research says now, as a teacher, when the students actually hear your voice, see you on the camera, they become more engaged. So that is something, is that very time consuming for you to take time and create videos? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it if you want to engage your learners. Also, for self-efficacy, once students have viewed the videos or the lectures that you have uploaded in the learning management system, when the students return to the face-to-face learning environment, they have more confidence, more of an understanding of the subject matter, because it gives them time away from the physical classroom where they can fast forward, they can pause, they can rewind. And so therefore, when they return back to the traditional classroom, they feel pretty confident pertaining to whatever subject matter you presented. Please do not allow your students to watch a 10-minute video. You will lose your students. For your elementary students, it is so important that you use bite size. If you have a 10-minute video, use a tool like Edpuzzle, where you're able to stop the video at a certain point and check for understanding. So you need to chunk your videos into bite sizes so that students will be able to digest the content. Once again, with anonymity, it just gives students the freedom to pause and at their own pace, where students are able to learn at their own pace. This is why it's just great for you to use instructional videos. And like I said, I'm just going to encourage you once again. Research shows that when you yourself are on that camera and your students see you, they become more engaged. This is the last online tool we're going to discuss. And when I say tool, well, the last pedagogical skill that you should be using in the online environment: meaningful feedback. And there are several ways to attack this. It should be timely. This keeps the learners engaged. This will help them to become more of an active learner. That's why your teacher presence, when you're in that online, when you're doing the discussion board, when they notice that you have contributed to the post, or when you have addressed their concerns in a timely manner, that lets your learners know that you are there. You might not physically be there, but your presence is there. Another way to use meaningful feedback is use some type of screen capture tool, maybe such as screencast, where you can take a student assignment. If it's an essay, you can go through the essay, use your student name and highlight, this is what you should have done, or this is what is required, or this was not followed by the rubric. Provide some type of feedback, not just in an audio way, but have yourself on the screen by going through the student assignment. It will make your students feel a connection between you and your student. This is all your social presence. This is all your cognitive presence. You are addressing those learning objectives that maybe they did not meet. For your evaluation, I kind of covered evaluation earlier, but I just kind of wanted to just go back over because it is so important, especially with formative. I saw a lot this year where teachers were getting that real-time feedback, and teachers were able on the spot to address what was going on. Even the students who were at home, I know in our school district, a lot of the teachers, many of the teachers use like Nearpod. And so the students were able to participate. Personally, I like to use Google Jamboard because I was able to see in real time, maybe the students writing the math problem on Jamboard, and I was just able to collaborate with them in real time. So Google Jamboard I used that a lot for formative assessment.
Dr. Price, going back for a second, one of our participants had turned their lectures into ed puzzles. So that helped them to keep from being just lecturing all the time because they just converted it to the ed puzzle.
Awesome. Yes, there are several other tools out there, but I really did enjoy using Edpuzzle as well. For your summative evaluations, group projects are great, portfolios, journals. I'm sure as educators, there are so many ways that you actually provided great learning activities for your students. And whether you know it or not, and I'm still going to go back and say this year, you should really put on your resume that you are an instructional designer because you selected the appropriate materials, you designed the learning activities, you were actually designing instruction for the online environment without being formally trained. And you should really give yourself a pat on the back. I'm just amazed. Although you might have been frustrated, you didn't think you were successful. Trust me, you have developed a new skill that you weren't aware that you even had. So I just want you to continue to do more research on the community of inquiry framework. I'm going to go back to that slide because I really want you to look at it. I want you to really just take time and just focus on how you're making sure that when you're doing your blended learning this coming school year, that you are there for your students in these 3 different ways: socially, cognitive, and as the teacher. So I would just encourage you to do more research on the community of inquiry. And this is the last slide. If you have any questions or if I can answer anything, this will be the time for that. John, I guess I do want to know that if somebody goes back on demand and watches this at a later time, am I able to answer their questions?
Yes, the social wall will still be there and you'll be able to comment on it. They'll be able to comment on it. They'll be able to see the comments that came in through this, the live session as well.
Okay. Well, I would just truly like to say I have really enjoyed presenting. Normally, I've been coming to this conference ever since it was in Birmingham. So doing it from home, I just made the decision not to travel to Mobile, but I feel that although I'm home, I'm still able to present my area of expertise pertaining to educational technology. And I would just like to thank John, you and your staff for the support that you have given me, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Price, for being with us for a very timely and informative session. I believe we're all going forward with new open eyes about how virtual learning looks, how online learning looks, and best trying to formulate it all into best practices. So this is definitely a help. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. I'm going to close all the presentations. This presentation will be archived and accessible through the Conference Tracker app and at alabamaetc.com with your login. And I'd like to thank everybody for being there. Everybody have a good weekend and stay safe with the disturbances out there in the Gulf because we never know where they're going ashore. Thank you all.
All right, goodbye.